Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with Thomas van Zuijlen. Hey Thomas, welcome back.
Hey Vasco, good to be here.
So Wednesday is a change, or as I like to call it, leadership change episode. And we want to hear about a story of a change you were involved with. And obviously, tell us the story, but also as you go, we want to hear more about what were some of the tips, the tricks, the tools, the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
All right. Well, I worked a couple of years ago with a company, with actually a development company, and they were being hired in by an accountancy software firm. And that accountancy software firm had sort of problems with one of their products because they had lost control of the code base. They'd been outsourcing it for a while, and now the team had left and or been sacked. And as a result, it was really hard to deliver on the stuff that they promised. And in a short amount of time, I would say the best they could do was hire us. That sounds really terrible. Of course, my colleagues were all very much professionals, and so was I. But they couldn't get people themselves, and so they had another partnership they were eyeing with another company, and that was us. So what I came up with, and what we as a team would do, was sort of using what Martin Fowler calls a StranglerFig pattern on the code base as a whole, or that part of the code base. And I wanted to do the same with the organization. So to use that particular product that we were supposed to be working on as a means to sort of freshen up the way that they would work with different products.
So that we set this up correctly. So you were looking at, okay, so how can we do the transition, right? Like how can we do the transition of this company working with some other software team to work with our software team, the one you were involved with, right?
Yes, yeah. So the previous team had already left, and now there was no, let's say, capacity within our clients' teams to pick up this particular product that we were supposed to be working on, while there had been some sales made already based on let's say, future, which it
usually happens.
Yeah.
So how did you think applying the Strangler pattern would help you here? And we're talking about organizations, not the code itself, which eventually probably it had to be. But for now, the organization part, like how was your thinking process? Like how could this help?
I thought if we show the value of, let's say, short lines of communication and quick feedback loops, then it will help this organization to sort of move towards that on a larger scale, because I was convinced that it would be more valuable and that we could get better outcomes and create less waste, so to speak, if we applied this. So I tried to set up to create a situation where a new team, together with existing stakeholders and business and support desk personnel, that sort of stuff, could get started on a way of working that would be a departure from what they already had. So they had some form of what they called agile process, and it was fine, but there were really long feedback loops. And I thought, okay, let's shorten those and see to make transparent where bottlenecks lie. So that was my idea going in. What was important for me was that it worked a little to actually do all the things that you dream of as doing as a Scrum Master. So that is, well, it sounds weird, but go for YOLO levels of Scrum Mastership. I'm a millennial, and you can hear by the abbreviations that I use, but like just throw everything to the wall that you think, okay, this is what a team and an organization needs or needs to have done together or to live through together in order to have a successful like working relationship with each other. So I got them to a point, to my surprise, they actually went for it. It's amazing. Where in the space of a week, we did lots of stuff with just the team, the Scrum team, but also with people around it, crucially with the people around it. We set team agreements. We came up with a definition of done. We set up the first pipeline, created a bit of a backlog, did some backlog refinement with the incoming product owner, that sort of stuff. And the result was that the Scrum team felt more empowered because their work was seen immediately, also, let's say, quote unquote, judged or understood by the people that would be affected by it elsewhere in the organization. And the people elsewhere in the organization were let's say, immediately onboarded on the new expectations that would be put on them and the cycle that we would go into, right? Because it's not just some Scrum team working in isolation for an X amount of time. It's really a collaboration. And that's the only way forward, especially if you've got like a huge amount of difference between the things that you've promised to your clients and the state of your software at that time. And this way we had like a shared experience that we were making during that week, and also shared artifacts, things that we have touched together, right? People working in the support desk, but also sales technicians and Lord knows who else. We all touched the same, in our case, Miro board. So we could always refer back to that, and did so in many a sprint review, so to speak.
So it became kind of a crystallized documentation of what had been agreed during that week.
Yeah, I designed a set of workshops around like the basics that I just mentioned, that every Scrum Master is like probably aware of. And I thought, okay, let's have that workshop, and just the outcome of it, that is something we need to record. So I didn't care about recording the minutes of the meeting or whatever, but first we talk about the why, then the how, and also there's a time for the what, that sort of stuff. I really named it those names, and it just was like a half a day program in which you create this or that. And which stages does your product need to go through before you can say it's done? And are those really all necessary, or can we shorten it a little bit? And what does done mean? And so you have those conversations together, and the things you end up with are the real, let's say, the artifacts that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds to me that from the stakeholders, or in this case, the client's perspective, it was also a very good way, because it's the start of the relationship, right? There's no expectations, or there are some expectations, but not as to how we work together, right? Like, yeah. It sounds to me that it was also a great opportunity to have the team show, okay, here's what we can do, right? Like setting up the first pipeline together, maybe even having the first build of the software done and shown to the customer, whatever that might be, with a micro change that is visible and it shows value, for example. Yes. So it both establishes trust, but it also establishes, hey, here's what we need from you if you want us to be successful.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was kind of new to this client, because previously it had just been more like, here's some requirements that are ill-defined. Good luck, other team, so our predecessors, make something out of it, and then we will judge it a bit later. But here we shortened that feedback loop considerably and really made a collaboration out of it, which always sounds a bit ephemeral, or like hard to pin down, but the trick is just to involve people, in my experience, to just involve people in creating that first thing. Then it's not so scary. Then you have just that small change, and then you really show what it can be like to run one sprint where there's let's say a vertically sliced piece of value ready for you afterwards. And then you can see how that will go next. So it's not scary. So if you're in management, it doesn't mean that you have to be in many meetings with people from the team or something.
It strikes me that you use the short feedback cycle not only as kind of something we want to implement, and the team needs to get an understanding of what is being produced, whether it's valuable or not. But it sounds to me that as part of the design of that workshop, you also created a necessarily very short feedback cycle for expectations, for agreements, and for defining what the relationship was between the client and the team.
Yeah. Yes. That's why when I started talking about this, I was like laughing about it a little bit because it was kind of scary to do. Because I thought, okay, I know that this can work, but based on previous experience with only part of it, but I've never done it all together. So this sort of YOLO level of bootcamp, quote unquote, style, getting ready, it just sets the stage for so many things. Like if you think of it in terms of planes taking off, there were many planes, that analogy, right? Many planes taking off there, and it could have gone badly for some of them, but in this case they were all in flight, which meant that we could land those planes later on as well. But at least things were moving.
Yeah,
and I think the only way to do that is with
And I was just thinking about this, like one of those planes that was like kind of taking off at that time was something that is very easy to understand, which is working agreement, right? Like, here's what we expect from you. Here's what you think you expect from us, but what do you think? And there's that level of conversation. That's also a great feedback loop, by the way, because it happens face-to-face or in an online call. But there were perhaps some not so obvious planes taking off, which is this creation of relationships that later on will unblock things, right? Like, because the client and the team were working together in the same virtual space, so they could actually hear each other. And the developers, or at least some developers, will definitely pick up, okay, so here's the person that I need to talk to if there's a doubt with this thing, and that other person is the one I need to talk to if there's a doubt with this thing.
Yes.
Right? So there was also the building of a community at the same time happening there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's good that you highlight that. I didn't make it very explicit at the time, but for sure that happened. And it really lowered the threshold of people asking for expert advice or involvement of subject matter experts, so to speak. So I'm really proud of my colleagues for stepping up to that particular plate and really making something out of it.
And this also, I think, illustrates very clearly how one event can bring a lot of change to that community if it's done at the right time, right? Like, if you would do that event like 6 months later, it would probably not have even half of the impact that it had at the start of the relationship.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So here's an opportunity for you as a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, or if you're in that position to engender change. If you want to take that leadership baton, so to speak, then try to do it early. Like, I mean, find the right spot, as you say, the right time, but that's probably sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. We only get one chance to make the first impression, as they say.
Yes, very true in this case. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Thomas. That was a great story.
All right. Thank you, Vasco.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.